welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the fourth installment of the Negative Progression podcast. We're here with Travis Johnides from the Goodwill, Long Island pop punk. Long Island has such a long history of punk, pop punk, hardcore, and I feel really lucky to have put out a record, your first full length with the Goodwill. That was a moment. Back in 2003. So welcome, Travis.
Thank you, Seth. It's just honestly a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to dig into the past, talk about today, just reconnect. And I notice we have the same facial hair, which is good. So that means I think life is going in the right in the right direction for both of us right now.
If by that you mean we're not dyeing our beards, then yes.
Yeah, you have a lot more hair than me, so you're you're doing good in that department.
Everyone has their own style.
Exactly. But yes, so incredibly happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about before the Goodwill. Obviously, I mentioned a little bit about the Long Island pop punk and hardcore scene. In my experience, so when in 2003, I mean, we actually first probably connected in maybe 2002 or 2001 through I remember, and you tell me if you remember this as well. So the Negative Progression Records website had a message board back then. And it was just very basic. It was like all black background, and it had these little threads and comments and responses. And I do remember first finding out about, I don't know if I think I first found out about the Goodwill from the message board, but I had known about Whoopie Cushion because you sent me a demo.
Yes, I definitely remember connecting with you through Whoopie Cushion. I have a very vivid memory of Over It coming out to Long Island to play a show, and we booked the show for them on Long Island. And I remember I also had the Negative Progression Oldies But Goodies comp.
Nice.
And loving that. I mean, I think everyone loved that at the time. And I remember I was like, this label is awesome. And now they signed this band, Over It. These guys are awesome. They're so cool. So I can't remember if we messaged you or tried to reach out to you prior to the connection we had with Over It. But it was certainly around the earlier stages of my punk rock career in Long Island. Like you said, I was playing guitar in a band called Whoopie Cushion. So it was definitely around then where we sent you a demo. And then I guess I don't know if we talked back then, how
long was Whoopie Cushion around?
Whoopie Cushion was started by me and the other guitar player, singer Dan, in high school. We started that in 98, I believe it was.
Oh, that's earlier than I thought.
Yeah, so that was our senior year of high school, and that went till about, I guess, 2002 or so when we started the Goodwill. So yeah, somewhere between 3 and 4 years.
And so who from Whoopie Cushion was in the Goodwill?
Right. So it was just Greg, the drummer, and Dan, the other guitar player, vocalist.
So 3 out of 5 people?
3 out of 4 people.
3 out of 4 people.
Okay. And then we did in the Goodwill bring on Brian, who was the lead vocalist, and we brought on Josh, who was another high school friend, to play bass.
Okay, right. So did you guys consider it? I mean, obviously it's a new band.
Sure.
But did you, because there were 3 members of the Goodwill that had been a band previously, did you guys consider it sort of the next iteration of that, or something totally new?
Yeah, we thought of it as something totally new. I remember, we toured a lot in Whoopie Cushion. We booked our own tours. I mean, one time we even went out for, it was 8 weeks straight. We would spend our entire school year booking, for that following spring break, for summer, so on and so forth. But we were on the road a lot, so we got to meet a lot of people. But I remember we befriended Richard and Stephanie from Thru Records. And I remember them liking us as, people, liking our determination, our drive, so to speak. I remember one of them just saying, like, Whoopie Cushion's just a silly name. Like, you guys need to, kind of, step it up. And it was great advice. You first hear that and you go, oh, come on, like this great label telling us our name is a little silly, but it was fantastic. And I don't remember if it was them or someone else, but someone else very kindly said to Dan and I, like, again, appreciate your determination, your drive. You two aren't vocalists. You know, like, yeah, sure, you sound fine in like a punk band playing in your parents' garage, but you guys are touring, you're out here, you're like playing great shows. Like, you need someone who can sing. So we looked at it as a new band. We said we want to kind of like, you know, get a clean start, you know, get a vocalist, write new songs, get a new band name. So it was really just not a continuation. It just so happened to have 3 of the 4 members from Whoopie Cushion, but we looked at it as a clean slate, so to speak.
Right. Well, that's amazing that you toured that much. Like, how far? And obviously this is about the Goodwill, but Whoopie Cushion was also, so in the context of, my memory is in the context of East Coast pop punk,
right?
You know, Long Island was always a hardcore, hardcore music, you know, and I sort of feel like Whoopie Cushion was one of the first pop punk bands on Long Island. Were there, I mean, you grew up there, were there like pop punk bands before you?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I'm sure there were, but like you said, I remember earlier in my high school years, prior to starting Whoopie Cushion, it was all hardcore shows, you know, just constant, you know, every band was a hardcore band. So I think there had to have been, you know, pop punk bands, because I do know once we started playing with Whoopie Cushion, you know, playing shows on Long Island, we were definitely playing shows with other pop punk bands, but it must have been somewhere in that time frame, you know, give or take a few years, where the pop punk band started, you know, emerging, you know, or kind of stepping out of their parents' basements to actually play shows.
Well, I think that I mean, you know, as humble as you want to be, I do think Whoopie Cushion was one of, if not the first, most important pop punk band on Long Island, from my perspective. Because you know, I mean, I think you know that before I did the label, or right when I started the label, I was in a pop punk band called Litmonger in Connecticut. And so that was 95, 96, 97. So it was before Whoopie Cushion. But when we would play, you know, we never played on Long Island, and I wasn't aware of any pop punk bands. And even in Connecticut, there was really only like ska punk type bands. And I'm sure that was really popular on Long Island as well.
I mean, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
it's a thing. I think like when people, you know, when people see this interview, there will probably be some comments or something about, you know, Whoopie Cushion, I think. And that's fun, you know, it's cool.
Certainly it is definitely.
I remember, I don't specifically remember what the Whoopie Cushion demo sounded like or my thoughts of it, but I do think like when bands like you sent me a demo, I really was impressed by how much, you know, when bands toured a lot, like that was very, very important to me.
Sure,
I was really impressed with that. But I think maybe it was just sort of like one of those situations where it was just like, I wished maybe that the music was a little bit more elevated or a little, I don't want to say better, it's just like, just not there yet to me.
Of course. No, and I would 100% agree. I think there was a big step that we took when we went to the Goodwill. I think Whoopie Cushion was perfect because it was a lot of trial and error, learn from experience, and we got a lot of experience. Recorded a lot, was on the road a lot. So yeah, I don't know if the Goodwill ever would have been able to be a thing without Whoopie Cushion. So I'm very thankful for those experiences.
So let's transition into the Goodwill. Oh, and I got to ask this question. We got to talk about this. So as it relates to your perspective on when like Taking Back Sunday and, you know, Brand New started, and obviously the movie Life was a little bit earlier. So they were already doing stuff and they were kind of halfway in between. I mean, I don't think people would have called the movie Life a pop punk band, especially when they were on Rev. They would have probably said they're a melodic hardcore band or something. But what was it like for you to be in a band when those bands started? Like, I'm sure you have these probably some stories where you were just like, oh yeah, Taking Back Sunday opened their first show and Whoopie Cushion headlined or some stuff like that, right?
It was wild, you know, like my immediate thought when you ask these questions is I just remember even just going to shows and every band was so good. It felt like around that, you know, late 2002, 2003, you could even try to go see a bad show, you know, because similar to like what you're saying is, you know, we would go see, you know, a friend who started a new band. And the second band on the bill was Taking Back Sunday that night, you know, and you'd heard a lot of whispers about them. And you're like, this band is amazing. And there was also that band, the Reunion Show, who was another band that was on Victory, and they were around that 2003 era too. And you would go again, you know, we would play a show, and like the Reunion Show would be on before us. We're like, this band is like amazing and brand new, so on and so forth. So I do have a lot of memories, of every show just being fantastic across the board. In terms of our shows, we did play a lot of shows with Taking Back Sunday back in the day. I thankfully don't think we ever headlined over them. You know,
I mean, were they like, and this is about you, not about them, but you have a very, very unique perspective on the rise of that. I mean, Taking Back Sunday and Brand New and Long Island, you know, for a few years were like kings of the world. So like when that was happening, were you just, I mean, in the very early years, I don't mean like when they were really big, but when they were first starting, were you guys like, what the hell? How is this band so freaking good?
That's exactly what it was. And I remember I went to a show. It was Taking Back Sunday, and then Brand New, and then Alkaline Trio. That was it was a Long Island show. It was at a church somewhere. And actually, funny enough, it was when we first started the Goodwill, before we even spoke to you. I remember us printing out flyers with a photo of us, and it just had like, you know, thegoodwill.com and handing them out at that show. But that's what it was, is, you know, you've gone to local shows your whole life, and there's certainly bands that you liked, you know, and there's bands that you thought were better than others, some bands that you didn't think that were that great. And like I said, all of a sudden, so many bands were incredible, like way above the level of those bands that you thought you were good at a time. So I could remember specifically that show now, Taking Back Sunday. I mean, like that, the magic, you know, there's a magic to those kind of bands. Even just watching someone swing the mic between lyrics, you're just like, what? Like you never even thought to do that yourself.
Yeah.
You know? And how captivating it was. You know, I think the best way I could sum it up is like those bands became entertainers. They, you know, they had, I mean, in Taking Back Sunday specifically, like they had a front man. He was an entertainer. He brought your attention, you know, to him. Similar to how, you know, like I think now, even when I still see Green Day to this day, like I'm just watching Billy Joe, and he's getting everyone to clap, and he gets everyone to be quiet, and he gets everyone to cheer. Like,
yeah,
there was like that different level. Like people weren't just playing music anymore. They were putting on like a performance. They were putting on a show. And it was just magic. It was wild to experience that. So seeing them with Alkaline Trio being the headliner, I've always loved Alkaline Trio, but in my opinion, Alkaline Trio is not a band that really like rocks out very, very hard. You know, they kind of just stand there and they play their great songs. So I remember that show specifically, again, Taking Back Sunday playing, microphones swinging, them just like, I mean, it just looked chaotic, probably sounded slightly messy, but it was perfect. And then Brand New, you know, I think Brand New was slightly they progressed a little more in their career at that moment. And they were just, you know, fantastic people, crowd surfing, everyone singing along. And then, you know, Alkaline Trio comes on, and it kind of seemed a little boring, you know. You know, I don't know if it's because we were watching those two bands from like, you know, from where we lived. You know, maybe if they played that show in the middle of Kansas, it would have been completely different. You know, nobody would have cared about TBS and Brand New. But yeah, it was magic. That's kind of like what it really felt like.
Well, I remember when I had moved already to San Francisco from Boston when I first heard about Taking Back Sunday. So I was like all the way on the other side of the country, and a friend of mine had their CD. And, you know, to me at the time, I mean, it was really just sort of like, okay, some new band Victory put out, you know, it's just like whatever. And Victory put out a lot of new bands all the time. And some of them were great and some of them were not great. And I also have a very like, I don't know. I have a very unique taste in bands. Like, I don't like Thursday. I'm sure everyone in the comments are gonna like slay me. I've never liked Thursday. I still don't like Thursday. So when I first heard, so when I was like hearing about, oh, Taking Back Sunday, it's a cool, you know, artwork and stuff. I wasn't like rushing to listen to it, but when I did hear it, I was just like, oh shit, that's amazing. And
Yeah.
and the thing that was crazy to me was I had seen at the drive-in in
Sure.
Boston in like 98 or 99 or something, play with, it was a weird show. It was like at the drive-in, Hot Water and AFI.
That's great.
Which was, I mean, yeah, but it was just like very
bizarre.
Yeah. And I think that Taking Back Sunday kind of captured that at the drive-in energy, but wasn't as like artsy and weird.
Yeah, right.
And so I think it was more accessible. And then like my memory of Brand New, I actually, after I was talking to them briefly, and was friendly-ish with the drummer at the time. I can't remember his name, but
Brian Lane.
Brian. Yeah, Brian. And so annoyed because they sent, like, right after they signed to Triple Crown, he sent me the demo. Like, he sent me the first record. He's like, oh, here's our record. And I'm just, holy fuck. Like, this is one of my favorite records of all time.
I know.
And I just remember being super into that. And I feel like Taking Back Sunday, because they were on Victory and they were sort of like the next Thursday, and Thursday had gotten so big, and it was just like that next step for Victory. I think Taking Back Sunday, people really, they were on the radar, but I really feel like Brand New was was much more of a grassroots, just like explosion. Because when we'll talk about this later, but I think it was 2000. I think it might have been before the negative progression stage on Warped in 2003, but it might have been 2002. I like got into Warped. I had a backstage thing because I knew Kevin Lyman, and I specifically went to see Brand New play a side stage. It was their first time. It was their first time playing at Warped, and because I had the pass, I just, you know, I'm a old hardcore kid, so I just pushed my way onto the stage. So I was on the stage, and it was one of these situations where it was right before the crowd was so huge.
Yeah.
It was so freaking huge on the side stage. It was because that happened at Warp sometimes, where Kevin Lyman wasn't completely aware about some of the side stage bands, how much heat they were getting and how fast they were growing. And basically it was like some band would be playing Warped Tour on a side stage for the first week or something, or week or two. And then Kevin was like, oh shit, let's move this band to the main stage. And that was my first experience actually seeing Brand New. And it was that first record, and just like a sea of people all singing. It was kind of like Saves the Day, but the next level of sing along.
Of course, yeah. I have some Warped Tour memories. I'll save them for when we get to there. But I'll just pivot for 1 second and say that I actually remember when you had the stage at Warped Tour in 2003. That's how Yellow Card started. I remember Yellow Card was on a side stage those first few days, whatever that was, and within days, they were then on the main stage. So I remember Yellow Card finished out that summer on the main stage, because that's when Ocean Avenue broke. I think, I don't know if it was out or it was coming out, but whatever happened was, I remember them being on a side stage. I remember their merch table being next to ours one day.
Nice.
And then two weeks later, everyone's just like, Yellow Card is the greatest thing in this entire world. But yeah, it's amazing how to witness that is magical. Yeah. I mean, it really is. And to have, like we're saying, like us being grateful and to have that firsthand experience to witness it.
Yeah,
that's a whole other level from not, outside, now it's kind of like I'm witnessing things through Spotify or watching YouTube videos. This was like, we were physically there. What a wild ride.
So when you were, let's circle back to when you just formed the Goodwill, you're passing out flyers that say the goodwill.com or whatever at shows. First of all, that's really cool, probably for people to hear about that. Like, new bands. I mean, not everyone who watches or listens to this podcast is going to be our age. So
Sure,
for younger people, like the idea that not only did people pass out physical printed flyers to promote shows of their bands in the future, they would pass out physical flyers to promote anything.
exactly. I remember us doing that a lot. Going back to Taking Back Sunday, I remember going to see a Taking Back Sunday show, and I was never shy to try to promote what I was doing. You know, like I always just was so happy to be doing it. I want to share whatever it was, share the art, so to speak, the music with whoever was willing to listen, to look at it. Anyway, but I do remember also us printing flyers of some sorts at a Taking Back Sunday show. And it was when they started kind of gaining more momentum and they were actually up on a stage this time rather than like on, floor level. I remember taking one of our flyers, I folded it into a paper airplane. I remember I threw it at stage and the guitar player, John, caught it. It was between songs and he actually opened it and he's like, oh, the Goodwill's playing a show. I remember it was like a flyer for some show we were playing. So, but yeah, I mean, that's how you had to do it back then,
Oh, yeah.
So, there was email, but I don't think we were all checking our email as often. So,
Yeah.
if you needed immediate attention from somebody, the only thing you could do is be there physically with them or hand them something, tangible to hold on to.
I think it was also a little bit different too, because that was right around the time when these big bands that were breaking were like starting to get managers and things like that. And whereas in the past, you could just reach them through a friend of a friend or whatever. And then it was just starting to be kind of like, oh, well, yeah, talk to my booking agent or whatever. Whereas we never really had booking agents before.
Right.
I mean, I had a similar situation when I was, when I first moved to California. I was in a straight edge hardcore band called Breaker Breaker. And we were playing a show at Gilman Street. And it was our first show at Gilman Street. And I made up these little quarter-page flyers. So they were smaller. Sure. And 7 Seconds was actually supposed to headline the show. I booked it, but their drummer had a back problem, so they couldn't play. But I went to see Sick of It All play at this big place called Slim's that doesn't exist anymore. And as Lou, the singer, is like walking up to the stage, I like run up to him and just shove this neon yellow flyer in his hand, and he's just like, on the stage, he's just like, in his Sick of It All Lou voice, he's just like, oh, breaker. 7 Seconds, love those guys, Gilman.
Yeah, that's great.
That kind
that's
of
how you
stuff
to do it, like we're getting at. That's how it was.
Yeah,
and that was fantastic. That was fun. You also then had the opportunity most times, like, to talk to people and actually interact. Where now, we're kind of, we're behind the computer, we're Instagram messaging everybody. It was nice. You formed, you were forced to have conversations, with people. And granted, some people would take the flyer and they just walk away, and be like, yeah. But sometimes people would say, like, what is this? And it was nice. It was like that human interaction, which again, like we're missing more of now. Yeah, it was just fantastic. We got to meet so many people so quickly. I think because of that, everyone was like an actual friend in real life, so to speak, and not.
Oh, and you saved those flyers. And you saved those flyers and put them on your wall.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if I would have any of those original ones. I do have a lot of stuff, but I don't know if I have those original. Hey, we're a band called the Goodwill flyers.
Yeah.
I'll look.
At the time, you don't necessarily think about saving things for posterity like that.
I know. Yeah.
So when you started writing the songs for the Goodwill, well, I guess, how did you find? How did you audition singers?
So funny enough, Brian went to college with me at Marymount Manhattan College on the Upper East Side in Manhattan. So we actually never really had to, I don't think we ever auditioned anybody but him. It was the very first day, I guess it was very first day of my senior year, 2022. First day of his freshman year.
2002.
I said 22, yeah. 2002. Very first day of college. I was standing outside and I was wearing a New Found Glory t-shirt, and some stranger approaches me. He's like, oh, nice shirt. And we just started talking, and he asked where I'm from. I said, I'm from Long Island. He goes, I'm from Long Island as well. He's like, do you play in a band? I was like, yeah, we're actually looking for a singer. He's like, I'm a singer. And that was literally it. It was no effort. on our part. It was just right place, right time, stars
How did you
aligned.
audition him? Like when he first sang, like what did he sing? Did you
Yeah,
You Found Glory covers or something?
I know. I don't recall. I know, I think we had a few of the songs written. So yeah, so I don't know if we had him come and we said just like make up lyrics, because he wrote the lyrics. So I don't know if we had him make up lyrics just so we could hear his voice, or if, maybe we put the song on CD and had him write lyrics at home and come. I don't remember that, but I don't think there was anything more than like a 5-minute audition, and we just knew, we were like, yeah, he's the one. We're like, got a great voice. He's younger, and he's he had a nice smile to him, and we're like, he seems like a friendly, good guy, and it just worked.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing that I always wonder about. I mean, a singer of a band is so important
Yeah,
in so many ways.
so many ways, so many ways.
And it's just kind of like one of those things that would be pretty awkward if he shows up and he just like sucks.
Of course, of course, of course. Yeah, no, he kind of had all the elements, like we were looking for, and the enthusiasm. And yeah, thankfully it just worked out. I imagine we went to Greg, our drummer's mom's basement. That's where we practice all the time. And again, yeah, I don't know what he sang, but he lived close to us too. He was about, 25, 30 minutes away. So it was close enough too. And I guess it just felt perfect, and it worked out. Yeah, but it's just funny how effortless it was. It was just me standing outside a few minutes before my first day started, and he
Wow.
just walked right up to me, and that's it.
And what was the actual songwriting process? Did you and Dan like get together and write in the same room, or did you write a song and then Dan would add to it and he'd write a
Yeah,
song and you'd play, you'd have like your own songs?
sure, sure. So funny enough, it was mostly the opposite in the Goodwill. It was mostly Josh who wrote everything across the board. Most, I'd say that I have my copy of That Was a Moment here. I would say so there's 10 songs. I'd say 8 of those were probably just Josh. And then
Strange, because he did not play guitar.
yeah, he can play guitar.
Yeah.
But I think that was also, a key ingredient in us kind of taking that next step that I was talking about when we were in Whoopie Cushion, and we kind of felt like we needed a better band name. We kind of needed to elevate our songwriting. I think Josh 100% was like the person who was able to get us there quickly, and then help Dan and I wrap our heads around like what that sounded like. But like I'm looking, Forgotten Feeling was actually a Whoopie Cushion song that we then kind of redid. It was never on a Whoopie Cushion album. We recorded, I think we released it as a demo at some shows, but that was Dan's song. And then I remember the song Deception. The intro was like a riff I had, and then we kind of wrote the song around that riff. And the rest, yeah, I think the rest was just Josh. Like basically, like
For the listeners, what did Josh play?
yeah. So Josh was our bass player. Yeah, who also, as I mentioned, went to high school with Dan and I. We would all add our own little parts, of course, to the songs. And Brian would write. I think Brian wrote 100% of the lyrics. But yeah, they're all Josh's fantastic
Let
ideas.
me ask you this. This is interesting. As guitar players, you and Dan, was it strange for you to have the majority of the guitar parts written by someone else? Did you have sort of like a visceral musician response where you're like, shit, man, like I'm up here playing shows and I didn't write most of this shit. Like,
Yeah. No, it didn't, because kind of like I said, or at least for me personally, I felt like Josh got me to hear what that next level was, where I don't think I at the time knew what it was. I don't want to speak for Dan, but I don't think I was able to hear it at the time. So I think I don't say, I think I know I loved it, because again, it kind of got me to where I wanted to go. And some of the guitar playing was, slightly more complex than Whoopie Cushion. So it got me to become a better guitar player. So no, I looked at it as, I'm someone who always feels there's something to learn from other people. I'm not stubborn in the least. I always get excited to just better myself. And it just kind of felt like as a musician, it was that opportunity to do that. But again, we added our kind of like our flair, so to speak, to it. So, but no, I never had a problem with it. It still always felt like it was all of our band, and it wasn't like just a band playing songs that Josh wrote, in my opinion.
Well, this might be a good time to play one of the songs.
Great.
This is Sometimes the Radio. It's one of my favorite songs on the record. So we'll listen to it for a few seconds.
Sure.
With the words that fill me, girl, I'm sorry. With my deepest honesty, baby. When silence follows you, it's a reminder of a mistake.
All right. So I would recommend, of course, everyone to go to Spotify and listen to the entire record. That was a moment. It's great. It's great. And so we'll get back to the writing process. Now, you guys, did you set out to write a few songs, or did you set out to write like a full-length album?
Yeah, I think we wanted to be like a band that did more than, just a few songs. I think Josh was always impressed with me and Dan's drive to get on the road, our ability to book shows, and kind of like I was saying before with the handing out the flyers, I think he appreciated our ability to get people to like hear our songs and know of our name. So I think right off the bat, we wanted to do what we did in Whoopie Cushion and take it up a level. So yeah, be a full-time band, tour, play shows, and try to do as much with it, as we could. So I think that was always the game plan from day one.
When you were promoting the Goodwill from the start, were you like ex Whoopie Cushion? Because that was very common back then.
Yeah, I don't recall. I remember a lot of shows where people would be like, I miss Whoopie Cushion. And, we're like, we're a different band. So for that,
I feel like over the years, you guys, I don't know how to say it, but I think that's kind of like an identity struggle that you guys had back then.
I think as we're talking,
wow,
we're realizing that more and more.
Well, because that happened. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about like after you were I only put out the one full length, and then you put out full length on another label afterwards. But I felt, looking from not being involved in that process, from what I remember the second full length sounding like, it sounded different to me than the first record. Right. And I felt like that was kind of indicative of, not to jump around, but sort of this identity evolution that I feel like you guys, more than other bands that I worked with, were really, really conscious. I don't want to say self-conscious, but conscious of how you wanted to portray yourself and how people perceived you. And that discussion seemed to kind of be ever evolving.
100%. That reminds me of even thinking about, what we should and shouldn't do on stage. And what I meant was that I always loved getting people to clap, like that part of the song where I brought to the front and I would be like,
do this.
But I remember having conversations, all of us being like, are we kind of just forcing it now because we know we do it every show? We want it to feel natural. If it doesn't feel appropriate at this moment, do we not do it? Or do we have to do it because we know people will like it and it's good to put on a show? But yeah, I think we were always conscious of, like you're saying, how we sounded and how people perceived us. I think we really cared about the music element of it. Not to say we didn't care about the show, part of it, because we did. But I think we like really wanted to sound good. We really wanted, like as you're saying, from that going to that next record, we really wanted people to say like, oh, they didn't make the same record twice. They kind of grew. I think that was always something we paid attention.
Do you feel that the Goodwill kind of got in its own head a little too much about that kind of stuff?
Interesting. I don't know. I've never really given it any thought, but I would say there was definitely a portion of it. I mean, I think there was a lot of things that kind of brought us down, so to speak.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
purpose of this
Yeah.
is like I don't want to, I don't like talking about like the end of bands.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
So let's, I try to be a positive guy, and so I'll just
But yes, but to answer your question directly, yeah, I definitely think even a conversation about hand clapping, what a bizarre conversation to like have. So I think, yeah, there must have been, I think there definitely, I could say there was a part, I don't know what the percentage was, but there was definitely a part, I think that, yeah, like you're saying, like there was a part of that played into everything coming to an end, so to speak, just being.
Well, I mean, I think, and I'm not even, I feel like there's a thread between even the stuff about like Whoopie Cushion and you mentioning that like Richard and Stephanie were like, oh, that's silly. It's like, meanwhile, they were like directly connected to Blink in the early years, like in different way. I think maybe Richard did a video for Blink, or like they knew them at least.
Yeah.
And you have like Blink 182 is the silliest band on earth. And back then they were even sillier, And so it's just kind of funny to me that I'm not saying that if you hadn't formed the Goodwill and changed your, I just think if Whoopie Cushion had gone on as Whoopie Cushion and you kept becoming better musicians and you kept touring, maybe Whoopie Cushion would have been big too, and there's nothing who knows, about things, but it seems to be that like that self-evaluation about like, oh, is the name too silly, and Richard and Stephanie said this, and like we're touring and like this, that, and the other, and then and then like when That Was a Moment came out, you guys did all this work, and then it makes natural sense that you're trying to take it to the next level, because you want to do it full time, and also you're surrounded by bands that are blowing up. I mean, that's a big thing, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but later. But it seemed, I can see that happening at every kind of major crossroads for you guys.
That's so interesting, because I've never thought about that ever, but I think that makes sense. You always hear these stories of adults trying to work through something that maybe a parent said to them earlier in their life, and they never realized that they carried that with them for all these years. And maybe you're right, like those few comments, which I still think helped us move on, kind of stuck with us. And like you're saying, we constantly evaluate ourselves because we were kind of told to at one point in time, and then we saw success because of that. So maybe we kept thinking that we had to constantly evaluate to get to the next level. But yeah, that's really interesting. I like that.
Yeah, Seth Hyman, punk rock therapist.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is too, is back then, I mean, Richard and Stephanie had so much influence because Drive-Thru was just so omnipresent, especially on the East Coast.
Right.
And they were very, very open to bands and very communicative to bands at all levels, and they were great as far as talking to people, would send them demos, they would respond. I mean,
everybody.
I have nothing, I have only great things to say about those two. They're wonderful. Every interaction I've had has been great, and it's something, we started our labels around the same time. Obviously they had a little bit more success than I did, but c'est la vie. But I think that's part of it too. On the West Coast, if you had bands where, I mean, if Brett Gurewitz is talking to pop punk bands that are sending demos to Epitaph, they would probably look at their band differently based on the feedback, right? Sure. Brett Gurewitz was probably not doing that. He was a little busy doing other things.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But no, I think it's just interesting for people to think about as far as looking back.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'll be spending the rest of my day thinking about that.
So where did you record That Was a Moment?
That was with Dean Baltulonis at Atomic Recordings.
Right.
Brooklyn, New York, where we did do our second full length as well. I don't remember who made us aware of him, but there was a lot of bands. Maybe it was also Jason, who was our manager at the time from Heavy Hitter. Maybe it was Jason who made us aware of Dean, but I mean, Dean
I don't think so. I don't think so because Jason, because I signed you before
oh, that's
you were
right.
with
Yeah,
Jason,
correct.
and then we recorded before you were with Jason.
Right.
So you must have heard about Dean from other bands.
Yeah. He was having, I don't remember specifically who, but I remember just waiting a while to record, and he was just constantly booked. And I think he was an old hardcore kid, just like yourself. But that was a great experience. He was, and he was.
What was it like to record there?
You know, the funny thing I always think about right away is just the trip from Long Island to Brooklyn every day and back, you know, having to be there, whatever it was, you know, 10 in the morning, and how early you'd have to leave to avoid, you know, rush hour traffic. But Dean, I always remembered having a very calm, he was like very calm demeanor, very soft spoken, never raised his voice. He always just seemed, you know, laid back, cool, collect. So there was definitely no stress whatsoever. You know, I always remember these stories of hearing about Glassjaw in the studio, and to get Daryl to sing with more energy. I think the producer was like literally throwing stuff at him while he was in the sound booth. Just, you know, that was the old folk tale. You know, I don't know if it was true, but I remember it being just like pretty laid back. And I think in those that early time of the Goodwill, like again, Dan, Josh, and I went to high school together, so we were friends. And now we were friends in bands, and now we were friends in bands, spending every day together. So it was a blast. Greg, I had been in Whoopie Cushion with, as well as Dan, so that was fun. And then I'm there with my college buddy Brian. So it really was, it was great. I just remember just having like a lot of fun. Again, calm, you know, air, you know, to the experience, and just really, I think we liked our songs, we liked the music. We were incredibly psyched to be on Negative Progression. So I mean, I think it was just a perfect recipe for just a pleasant experience. That's really what it was. I don't remember anything but just having a really, really good time.
Did Dean do any producing on the songs? Like, what's your memory of any kind of changes in the songs in the studio, or change in the vocals, or you know, was he like, oh well, you need to, you know, what about this part here, or, you know?
Yeah, I remember it being very minor. I have more memories of Josh hearing things that should be changed, Josh telling Brian, like, you should do a harmony here, telling Brian that was off, do it like this, singing it, having Brian do it. So I remember very well Josh feeling in my mind as more of a producer of sorts.
Was he in a band beforehand? I can't remember.
He was in bands. He was in a band called Sundays, which went on to become As Tall as Lions.
Oh, okay.
He was on Triple Crown. He played bass in that band. Josh also went to the Berklee College of Music, so he's a fantastic musician. He has the ear for everything. So again, yeah, I remember more of him serving as a producer role. I have no doubt that Dean probably said, like, you know, like, yeah, try that again. But I think Josh having written most of the songs, and then Josh kind of being the ear, you know, for the recording, I don't think much really changed in the studio, and anything that changed was just Josh having another, you know, fantastic idea. I was big on like gang vocals, so I remember a few times being like, we got quadruple the vocals here, and doing that. So we all had little inputs, but I don't remember Dean really serving much as a producer.
Yeah, interesting. So, well, that's funny. If he went to Berklee, maybe we were in Boston at the same time. That's funny.
Yeah, so
I'll have to ask him.
Yeah, he graduated high school a year before Dan and I believe. So he would have graduated in 97 high school. So he would have been in college in, I guess, 98 to 2001.
Yeah, I mean, I was around. So that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the fun things, is you start realizing you were at some of the same shows together, and you didn't know each other. And,
yeah.
What was your, well, let's talk about the artwork.
Sure.
Yeah, what was the internal dialogue about the artwork? Did the band like it, not like it?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm looking at it here. I mean, you know, it's hard. I'm in a different place in my life now in terms of, you know, what I appreciate compared to what I appreciated, you know, 20 years ago. You know, there's a little bit of a silly element to me, but I think it was perfect for that time. And I think it was perfect for the kind of music we played, you know, kind of like, like the look we were trying to have, the lyrics we, sang about, I think it made sense. It was all about heartbreak and finding your place within relationships, finding your place within life and within your family and stuff. So the artwork is actually one of my best friends, Tyler, and one of my friends from high school. Her name is Donna. So we filmed this just, one town over from where I actually grew up and from where I live now. I feel like this might have been Dan's idea.
Yeah, blame Dan.
Blame Dan. But I also
I
think
think the artwork's cool.
And I think it made sense for the album title too. Like that was a moment. I think that album title just was about, capturing a moment in time, throughout your life. Like that was a moment. This was a moment. That day there, that was a moment. And it kind of felt like the artwork was speaking to that too. Like that was the moment of, falling in love and it not working out and, moving on, whether that moment's a good thing or a bad thing. So I think it worked.
I think it's awesome because it's really, well, I think the artwork is a moment in punk rock album art,
Yes,
right? Because I feel that this time period, you have, the artwork is like a series of images that tell a story. And I just remember, again, just tying it into that whole Long Island thing, some of those early Taking Back Sunday and Brand New videos were very like an attempt to be cinematic.
Yes. Yeah.
Like the one where it's like ripping off Fight Club and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And it was just, I feel like there were these growth spurts within the scene where you have before, let's say before 2000, all punk rock art was pretty simple, and it was stuff that was designed by hand and probably mocked up in Kinko's or whatever. Even like even big bands like had pretty fairly simple art. Sure. And I feel like after the 2000s, as the punk scene and Warped Tour really kind of like opened up what we were doing to the world, and suddenly some of these bands were selling hundreds of thousands of records. They're like, okay, well, we have a budget, let's do something interesting. And I sort of feel like this artwork is a step down that road as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I remember us wanting to put our faces on the back, as well, which I think was such a smart move too, thinking back now, because, we wanted, like, I think you were mentioning, very aware of how we presented ourselves to people. I think, there was a benefit to people seeing the band and what they looked like and how many people were in the band, kind of personalized, who we were before someone necessarily even heard us. So
yeah,
I just remember really loving the idea, like, obviously to have our faces on the back of a CD, how cool is that? First off, of course, but I think there was also some intention behind it, like you're saying, being aware of, people should see who we are before they even necessarily hear us.
Now I have a question about Brian and the tie.
Oh, I was just thinking about that. Yeah.
Did people ever come up and talk to you? Number one, did people come to your shows and ask Brian constantly, why aren't you wearing a tie? Because he's wearing a tie on the back of the CD.
Yeah.
And also, like, did people say that he was trying to like create, I don't want to say like copy Taking Back Sunday or Brand New, but in some of those bands' videos, like all the bands like wearing the same clothing and stuff like that.
Right.
And like he's wearing a dress shirt with a tie and whatever. And did that ever come up at all?
I don't remember anyone ever saying anything, but I do remember him showing up in this and we were just like, what are you wearing? Like, and if you look really, really closely, do you have a copy?
Yeah.
If you look underneath, he's got a blue shirt. He's got a blue shirt under there and then a white shirt. So if you look closely, he's got 3 layers of shirts. So I think if I remember correctly, he came wearing the white and blue shirt. Also came with the long sleeve shirt and the tie. And we were like, no way. but somebody, I guess someone, maybe it was the photographer, was like, I don't, no, like it's a good idea, and he wore it.
Yeah.
But if you look, it wasn't his only choice. But
I think it's interesting too, because he's got this look on his face, like he's just like this mysterious, badass
right.
person.
Sure.
And again, I think that, to me, that was somewhat reminiscent. I don't know if people thought it was trying to like take a bite off of Taking Back Sunday. Because at that time they were doing all of this sort of like, oh, we're edgy, we're, with the Fight Club video and everything, and Brand New had some stuff like that too. I remember. I don't remember specifically what the videos were about, but I just remember it was just like really over the top. Like, it was that transition from when, and I think I never thought about this before, but when we were younger, emo was The Promise Ring, Texas is the Reason, Get Up Kids, Midwest, like very sugary,
gentle,
girls with glasses at shows, that. And then after this kind of period, you have My Chem blowing up, right? And then people saying emo is like Hot Topic, gothy stuff. And I feel like this like 1 to 3 year period, when Brand New and Taking Back Sunday and stuff were putting out these videos that were kind of edgy, kind of dark.
Yep, they were,
but not spooky.
No. Yeah, and what's interesting is I remember the woman Michelle, who she's mentioned in the liner notes, who took this photo. She was actually Taking Back Sunday's photographer.
Oh,
so, I don't remember exactly who okayed him to wear the shirt and tie. I know he brought it without us being aware, but it very well might have been her. Maybe she quickly thought of the similarities between the photos she's done of Taking Back Sunday, and she saw something in there. But I like it. Like, now looking at it, I like how we're kind of like dark and in the back, and he's just bright, and even like the coloring of his skin, like it's as if there was like a light on him. Yeah, it gave him that mystique, that mysterious nature, which kind of like we're saying, drew eyes.
Well, he's the front man, right? I mean,
which I think, and that's what we wanted, and what we wanted in the Goodwill, is to have someone front and center do what we were not able to do in our previous bands.
And I feel like that was different from other bands previously on Negative Progression. I mean, the June Spirit had a singer that was just the singer, but I don't think like their band imagery was similar. And all the other bands that I had, the singer always played an instrument. So the Goodwill was actually the first band on Negative Progression, I think, that had like a lead singer kind of thing. And also in this photo, you're all wearing dark shirts and he's wearing a bright white shirt. And I think that it was very clear. It was just kind of like, Brian is the lead singer.
Exactly. Yeah. He's the front man, which I think we were all really psyched about.
Well, it's interesting too to me, because you specifically, well, and Dan and like all of you, but like one of the things that always stood out to me when I saw you play was, and photos of you and everything, like, and it's probably because of your experience in touring with Whoopie Cushion, but just you and Dan were so good live, like not just with your playing, but also like your performance on stage, and Brian being like a performer person. Wasn't he like a theater person or something?
He was. He did a lot of school plays, and
so I feel like when you guys played, you sort of like performed, but it was authentic.
Sure. Yeah,
I don't like cheesy stuff, but it was really, you could feel the the fact that you guys came from underground punk rock, pop punk, and it was just awesome.
Yeah, no, and I think we loved it. I think we loved every second of it. And again, I think that's why we were fine, Dan and I, using Josh's fantastic songs. We were fine with Brian now being the front man, after Dan and I spending years really like, getting our hands dirty here, like really working, like we were fine with it, because I think we just loved it, and we saw an opportunity to kind of play for new people, more people. It just never bothered me, and I was really happy with it.
So the release of the record, it was, well, so that was, I usually break up the label into like waves or time
Sure, sure.
periods.
Yeah.
And I feel like your record was kind of like the last record in the first wave of negative progression.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's how I think about it anyways. And so you guys, your record, from my perspective, had the benefit of the growth of the other bands before you. And so when your record came out, what was your experience of having the record in stores and people kind of, were people coming up to you and talking to you and being like, oh, I saw it at Looney Tunes or whatever?
Yeah. It's definitely one of those experiences where, like, when you're in the moment, it's it's different than when you reflect on it years later, of course. In terms of the record store, I mean, that was something I wanted my whole life. I the first band I ever fell in love with was the Monkees.
Okay.
I just like loving the Monkees, and then I got into like Bon Jovi, and always knew I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be in a band. I wanted to have an album. Like, if I'm so lucky, if it's in record stores. So first off, it was an absolute dream come true, which we owe to you. So thank you. Which I think I think we talked about that recently over the. I was saying just how thankful I am for your involvement and everything. But yeah, walking into a record store you had spent how many years walking into, to buy whatever albums I was buying at the time, and then all of a sudden, like, your album's there on the shelves. I mean, it's surreal. It doesn't seem like it's real life. I mean, because how could it be? Like, how few people have that opportunity, And I remember specifically walking into a Tower Records. I don't know how the poster got there, but I remember you printed like the large, like in stores now posters, or on tour now, some along those lines. But there was a poster for our album there, and someone like on the bottom wrote, like, Long Island's the Goodwill, on sale now, whatever the cost was for albums back then. And I remember that even more so, just being like, A, how did our poster get there? B, Tower Records, this huge company, thought it was worthy to put up. C, some employee there wrote on it. Like, that, I remember just seeing the poster, because I'm imagining there was other artists' posters around us.
Right.
It blew my mind just so much, because it went through the hands of so many people to get to where it was.
Well, those kinds of things, I think that also is the work that you guys put in.
Yeah,
because I mean, I made posters available to lots of stores, and some of them put things up and some of them didn't. I mean, Negative Progression is not Sony, so I didn't have street team members to physically go to every store and put up stuff. And strangely enough, when I was in college, I did that I interned at BMG, and I would put up posters in record stores. Yeah. So I was like the guy that did that. Sure. So the fact that poster was there was actually someone that worked at the Tower Records, got a few posters and was like, oh, the Goodwill, I know them. They're fun. So that's you,
It was you. Yeah, thank you. No, we worked very, very hard, constantly, day in and day out. But I do also remember, the second part of your question, like signing autographs, like what a wild feeling that was. I remember one time being with a friend in Starbucks, and I hear, I'm sitting at a table by the window, and I just hear like a knock on the window. And of course, part of me is like a little scared to turn, like not sure what I'm going to see. But there was, 2-3 girls there or whatever, and they're like waving, and I was like, I didn't know who it was or what it was all about. I didn't know, whatever. And then she takes out a piece of paper and she's writing on it, and she holds it up to the window and says, "Are you in the Goodwill?" And I remember I was just like, that was incredible. I knew at the time, I never took any of that stuff for granted. I mean, that was so cool. Like, for people to pay attention to your music is one thing, but then to like seem like they enjoy it and they like it, that's just a whole other level. Because, like you were saying, how you have a particular taste in music. I know I'm the same way. I don't take it for granted when someone hears something I write and they say, I enjoy that. That's a big deal, because I know it's a big deal for me to get to the point where I enjoy it. So it was a really exciting time for sure.
what are some of the let's talk about tour memories, fun tour memories. What were some of the tours that the Goodwill did aside from Warped? We'll talk about that, but what were some of the tours that you guys did on your own? I'll take this opportunity to share something that I just found. It's a flyer of a show I put on
Oh, I don't have that one.
in California.
I was
And
just thinking of the Hidden in Plain View tour when you asked me, but yeah, I don't remember that flyer. That's amazing.
yeah, this was in Oakland at iMusicCast.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was
I-
just one of the shows. But what are some of the great memories?
I do remember that tour very well. Hidden in Plain View had just signed to Thru Records, so it was it felt great to be on a tour with a band on that label. A label that had been so nice to Dan and I and to the Goodwill all those years. Anna Divine, I think they were on the Militia group. I don't know if they were. Guys. So yeah, that was one of those tours where it kind of felt like we were doing something really great because we were being partnered with bands that we thought were great. In terms of like the memories, right now my head's just going to, I remember being in Vegas and none of us really having any money, and I don't know if it was like the penny slots or the nickel slots or the dime slots, but they come over and they offer you free drinks. I remember us just sitting there all day taking free drinks and spending $1.50 total. I do remember Dan though. I think he was losing a lot of money. That's always something Dan did. I remember a lot of one-off shows too.
Yeah, what were some of those? Like what towns were they in and whatnot?
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, I'm having a memory now of opening for Taking Back Sunday, not remembering where it was, but I remember Adam Lazzara, the singer, loving the song The Boy Scout, which was on That Was a Moment, and us telling him that we'd play it first for him. And I remember him just like sitting on the side of the stage by my amp, like singing along. And that was just obviously a great feeling because they were already on their way to doing, something really, really great. So like the front man, the lead singer of a band singing along to your songs was really, really cool. What else was there? I remember a lot of shows at
Backstreet. Speaking of, to interject, speaking of Long Island, it's 11/11 right now, and the Strider had a song called 11/11.
11.
They're from Long Island, right?
Yeah, Masquerade in the Key of Crime, was that the name of that?
Yeah. It was like did you guys used to play with Yearly before that?
We had played with Yearly and the Rookie Lot. Was the Rookie Lot? Was there someone in the Rookie Lot?
Oh yeah, the Rookie Lot I think was the band that became Brand New.
Okay, yeah, I think Brandon maybe that was also then in the Movie Life, who then was in Nightmare of You.
Right. Anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. I like that.
I'm looking at the clock and it's like 11/11. I'm just like, this is hilarious.
Strider was another band too. Yeah, you'd go to shows and they were always playing, and you kind of saw again people improving. Yeah, I have a lot of memories of being at Thru Records house. Also, like you were saying, their generosity, putting us up, letting us sleep on their floors. That was always appreciated and incredible. It's so hard to remember sometimes, specifics.
Okay.
Sometimes I do. Sometimes, I forget what was Whoopie Cushion. What was that first incarnation of the Goodwill, and then what was like the post negative progression. Right.
Well, so one memory I have that might spur a memory, is that when you had your I don't know if it was a CD release, but
at Sports Plus.
At Sports Plus. So I flew to Long Island to see you guys open for Taking Back Sunday and Breaking Pangea, the direct support. And it was Taking Back Sunday's first Long Island show in like a year or something like that.
Yeah.
And there must have been 2,000 people there.
I think I remember hearing there was 2,000 people. Yeah. And I remember you printed up like sampler CDs, because was their album out yet, or is it about to come out?
I don't remember, to be honest. Yeah. But it was an opportunity to build the band and the label in a way that I had rarely had. Yeah. So yeah, I did 2 songs of you guys first.
Right.
And I think 2 songs of the June Spirit and 2 songs of Counterfeit.
Yes.
and
I remember
just
I remember getting through a lot of those. I mean, I think we handed them out to literally everybody. And I
made
think that
1,000 of them, and I think we handed them all out.
I remember that show was incredible. I remember just having my family there, my parents there. I remember my parents walking up to you and just thanking you. I think that's my dad. I think probably did that. He was so excited because I'd spent my whole life wanting to do what I was doing. Yeah, I feel like that definitely was a pivotal point for the band too, because we were just kind of starting to get a little bit of our name out there. But then when the biggest band from your area has you play one of their biggest shows in a very long time, it's a lot of it is also about perspective. People coming here go, oh wow, that band the Goodwill must be onto something good because they asked the Goodwill to play. Oh, B, like they have this record label. Oh, the record label is not John's record label from Huntington on Long
Right.
Island. It's a real record label from out. They're handing out samplers. I think it was just like everything. It was just like, yeah, everything was like perfect that day. Like that was the right time for you to come out, for you to press samplers. For Taking Back Sunday to ask us to play. We had the songs ready to go. Like
And
you
you
said,
played really well. You played
us.
really well. I remember the stage was pretty high,
Yeah.
and you played really well. And I remember Eddie was watching you from TBS, and actually Matt Galley was there, who is their booking agent, and
Yeah.
he's like, the booking agent for everyone, and
Sure.
music now. But he was someone I knew from the hardcore scene in Boston.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that was cool that it was one of those situations where like important people for
All in one
you
spot.
were there.
And paid attention, which was absolutely incredible. And I'm remembering now Newsday, which was the newspaper from Long Island, they did a write-up on that show. And most of it, of course, was about Taking Back Sunday. Excuse me. But I remember them saying something about Brian. Maybe they mentioned him being like a crooner, but there was like a line about how he actually sang.
Yeah.
I remember us thinking how great was this too, because again, that's what we sought to accomplish in this band, was to kind of take a step up and have a singer who could sing, but B, he was actually able to do it live, which not everyone was able to do live.
Yeah.
See, like a newspaper like points out that aspect of the band. It's like they have a singer. Like it was fantastic. And I think there's a video of it. I know someone videotaped that.
Oh, really?
And
We got to find it.
I think it was Christian Winters who did a video for the Goodwill, after the Negative Progression era. But he's the one that did that Taking Back Sunday Fight Club video.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to ask him about that. I think he was there. I think he was filming it. Because I would love,
if he has it, I'm going to digitize it and put it.
Yeah,
on
I would love to see. I'd love to see that. But that was just fantastic.
So
fantastic.
I remember we were always talking about trying to get you on tour with Taking Back Sunday and other bands.
Yeah.
What were some of your from like internally, like what were some of your, it seemed like you had a lot of opportunities and available potential things that seemed like they were right around the corner.
Yeah.
So from within the internal dialogue of the band, like, how did you guys deal with that? Was there frustration? Did you get any of those tours, or what were the successes and failures in that?
Of course. Yeah, again, we always wanted more. We always wanted to do more. I do remember though, we landed, I don't remember how many days it was. It was short. It could have been like 4, 5, 6 days with Fall Out Boy. I think that was the Negative Progression era, but then it never happened. There was a snowstorm in that general area where we're all driving up to, and Fall Out Boy canceled that run of dates because I guess maybe they didn't feel comfortable. So that was a bit of a bummer, because Fall Out Boy was another band at the time that was, going on to bigger and better things. And
also that was like right after Bayside had that van accident, so I think maybe people were scared.
I
snow.
remember waking up that morning to a message from Jason, our manager at the time too. That was just horrendous, asking us if we had any information, and we didn't. Awful. Yeah, I don't remember ever. I remember just feeling like we had opportunities. That's also the kind of the nature of like who I am. I never kind of look at things as, why couldn't it have happened different? I remember Taking Back Sunday again. I mean, how can you ever be bummed if someone puts you on their hometown show that,
Right,
in
right.
front of 2,000 people, even if they had said previously, like, we want to get you on the road with us, they still did what they could do. And maybe it was all just booking agents, of course. Maybe we didn't really have someone for people to have a booking agent conversation with. I don't remember. But I remember a lot of bands, like you're saying. I remember Gabe from Midtown calling me on the phone multiple times saying he liked us. I don't think in the Goodwill we ever played with them. We played with them in Whoopie Cushion, I remember once. But yeah, I mean, I think again, I think I just use those opportunities to like pick people's brains, to hear how to do things better. We saw a difference in where we were to where all these other bands were. So I think we just took all those phone calls and all those conversations as like a learning experience. And I'm sure there were times if someone had a video camera on us, we were probably, back in the day, we're like, oh, we didn't get the brand new tour. Oh God, I'm sure we were, or we didn't get the Taking Back Sunday tour. I'm sure we did that. But I can't remember, times of being frustrated. I just remember times of people just being nice to us and like saying they liked us. And that just felt like a fantastic thing, And I mean, again, the stage at Warped Tour, the shows with Taking Back Sunday, the tours we toured with Bayside too, and Junction 18 and Hidden in Plain View.
Yeah, what was the Bayside stuff like?
That was actually the tour I remember where they signed to Victory. So I remember we were playing Fireside Bowl in Chicago. And I remember those shows being good. I think at the time we were on like a similar level. We were both bands that were touring just like a lot and enjoyed touring a lot. They weren't like huge shows by any means, but there was always like a solid amount of people that were there and really wanted to be there. So it was a good tour for that reason, that like everyone who was there wanted to be there. It wasn't like, 10 friends at the bar just having drinks. Like they were coming to see a punk rock show, even if it was somewhere between 30 and 50 people. But I do remember us witnessing Bayside kind of make a turn in that tour too, telling us, Victory Records is coming out to our show. I think it was that tour where they said Victory Records wants to sign us. And I feel like by the end of the tour, they kind of like started having bigger tours lined up. So, yeah, I think a lot of those.
Was that how you got connected to Jason? Because Victory, he had worked at Victory and
Yeah,
were friends, that in
I think we were with Jason prior to that. So there was, his name was Angel. He was friends with the guys from Taking Back Sunday.
Yeah.
We met Angel through Taking Back Sunday, and Angel used to work for Victory, and he knew Jason because Jason used to work for Victory. So I think that time frame, like you're talking about, where Taking Back Sunday was helping us, they were introducing us to their photographer, they were putting us on shows of theirs. Then they introduced us to Angel, and then I guess we were probably just looking for a manager at the time. And Angel said, "Oh, like I was just laid off from Victory. This great guy Jason was just laid off from Victory. He's going to start his own management company." So I think that's how we got hooked up with Jason. So I mean, a lot of those early stages were through Take It Back Sunday and their generosity. They were always
amazing. That's amazing.
Just being so kind to like offer a lending hand. I mean, it's fantastic, and they're still at it.
Yeah. So let's talk about Warped Tour.
Yeah.
So in 2003, Negative Progression put a stage on Warped Tour. It was called the Radioactive Stage, and it was pretty big deal for me. The year before, so the background for people that don't know, the year before, punkrocks.net had a stage for a portion of the tour. That was a popular punk rock website. Yeah. And this physical stage itself was actually owned by Lobster Records. And so I knew Lobster, and Steve from Lobster wasn't planning on doing anything like that again in 2003. And so I had bands play a few shows here and there on Warped Tour the year or two before, over it in Counterfeit and probably the June Spirit also. But when your record was in the pipeline, I was just like, oh, okay, this is the next level. You know, they're friends with Taking Back Sunday. Long Island is blowing up. They're great. They tour hard. Like I literally said to myself, I have got to figure out some way to get the Goodwill on a significant portion of Warped Tour, whether it's a few weeks or the whole thing. And I pitched it to Kevin just to have you play like Ernie Ball or something, or one of the other smaller stages. And I don't know, that didn't necessarily happen for some reason. I don't remember. Or maybe it might even have been that I had pitched, since I hadn't been successful in the past, I was like, well, he's not gonna, he's not gonna do this for me just yet.
Right.
So I approached him about doing a stage. And this particular year, there were a lot of side stages, a lot of small stages. So he was like, yeah, if you can get a stage, come on along. And there was, I can't remember, it's a website or something. There are these two young women who ran, I think, like a punk rock website that wanted to be part of it. I don't remember the name of it, but we did it together, and they had a connection to the sound system and the people that ran the PA. And so I think the PA was owned by this band Vanguard, and
I remember that name.
they played the tour. And so the idea was like, I bring the stage, they bring the sound.
Right, that's amazing.
And I selected most of the bands. She selected a couple of bands, and we just fucking
Made it happen. It's really what it was. Setting up the stage every morning. I remember doing that, like carrying whatever piece of the stage, whether we were all doing it. I have a memory right now. Yeah, like just early in the morning with Over It. And I guess we were just like unloading the back of whatever to just carry the stage to wherever it was going to go that day. Like it was completely DIY, which was.
Yeah, I brought three of my friends actually. And we had a trailer. It started out, I had an old Jeep Cherokee.
Yeah.
And then we ended up renting a van because the Cherokee died from pulling the trailer.
That's amazing.
Yeah. No, it's like one of those things where we were all, I mean, just like the bands that were on the stage were used to touring in a DIY fashion.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, of course.
Yeah.
The DIY tour. And there were some great highs and some speed bumps along the way. But we did about 2 weeks from California to Florida.
Yeah.
And what was, I guess, expound upon that experience for the Goodwill.
Yeah. Well, what comes to my mind first is, like you were saying, a lot of bands had tour experience, but I think there was kind of a different experience that you had to adjust to on a Warped Tour. I remember, like loading out at 11 at night and then having to be back at 8 in the morning or whatever it was. I felt, that was drastically different than going back to someone's house and sleeping till 11 a.m. I mean, we must have been in the van like every night, I guess. I mean, so I remember that portion being exhausting. I think we had brought our friend to do merch, so maybe he drove here and there, but he was just as tired. Those were long days out in the sun. I remember one day, Phoenix, someone, I guess, from the Warped Tour, staff was saying, it's like 130 degrees off the pavement right now. Those just made, just constantly hydrating. So it was a different type of tour. All the years I had done prior in Whoopie Cushion, the years I had done in the Goodwill, it felt like it was a different beast. It was something I could never do now. Like,
oh yeah, no.
Staying up that late, waking up that early, sleeping in a van, no way. But I remember the same things that I guess I've kind of been saying. It was a dream come true. I mean, I used to go to Warped Tour in the 90s and see bands, seeing Rancid and Green Day. I saw the Ramones one year at Warped Tour. That must have been, I don't know, maybe like 94, 95. So it was just another like blessing, so to speak, something else I wanted to hopefully be fortunate enough to experience, and I had the ability to experience. But I remember I remember feeling like all the shows went very well. I remember, similar to us handing out flyers, I remember we'd walk around with the Discman and we'd walk up to random people and we'd say, hey, this is our band, like we're playing today, can you listen to it? And I remember like the very first person we went up to, she like loved it and she bought one, for $10 from us right there. And I remember just continuously like still working, but having fun and watching bands we loved. It was just an incredible experience to do that. And then I actually remember, I think it was Andrew WK was on that tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the story you're going to go to. I don't know if you.
No, I just remember him being on, because I have a picture of him and Adam, the guitar player of Counterfeit.
Oh,
and,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I remember. I guess I think Greg the drummer of the Goodwill, and I were maybe walking by, and maybe they had to load out quicker than they originally had to, whatever. But I remember Kevin Lyman coming up to us. He's like, "Hey, I'm so sorry to ask. Like, can you guys just help us load out this gear?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure, fine." And pushing everything. And for that reason, he threw us on the hometown Warped Tour in Wantagh, New York.
Nice.
And we that same year, and we played the Ernie Ball stage. And it was all because, he thought we were being kind enough, I guess, to help.
So was that show just amazing because of all of your friends?
And that's exactly what it was, talking about a band like Bayside being on tour with them and starting at one point, and then them signing to Victory and kind of feeling like the tour ended a little different than how it started. It felt like that way for us with Warped Tour. I think maybe it was 2 weeks later was the Ernie Ball date. Cause like you were saying, we did California to Florida. So now they just went up to New York. And that's exactly what it was. And I have a picture of Josh, which I'll have to find and show you on stage. And I don't know who took it from behind him, but there was like a large crowd of people
Nice.
there. And that was one of those shows where we're like, wow, this is working. Like, this is actually working.
That's awesome.
I'm remembering now too. If you recall, one of the staff writers from Newsday flew out to California. Do you have that? I definitely have those. Yeah,
Yes.
I have them here in my basement. I have quite a few. Yeah.
Warped inside and out.
Yeah. So it kind of felt like
so cool.
that was like Rafer Guzman, who I've still stayed in touch with him randomly throughout the years. But yeah, I think that summer.
Tell about that article a little bit more, because it's like it's not just an article. It's like a multi-page,
Which is
expose or whatever.
And that was the front cover of part 2. What was wild was, I think Newsday printed different covers for different areas of New York that they were distributing to. I remember like the New York City edition actually had our picture in the corner on the front page, which the Long Island edition did not have. So I have that somewhere too. Funny enough, going back to my father, who I mentioned, came up to you at that CD release show and thanked you, for all your hard work and all that stuff. He actually was similar to me in that he wanted people to hear our music and wasn't kind of like shy about the way he would go about it. So my dad actually, without me ever knowing, just called up the music writer, Rafer Guzman, who I'd never met before, I'd never spoken to, called him, left a voicemail on his, work phone saying, my son is in a band called the Goodwill. They're signed to a label called Negative Progression Records. Their album's coming out, this and that. And that played a huge part in like our early publicity as well, outside of the label, because Newsday, I think Newsday had to have written about us like 5, 6, 7 times in like 2003, 2004. First was just kind of like who is this band, and then about the album itself, and then that full article. So Rafer maybe reached out to Jason, our manager at the time, and said, I'd love to fly out to California. I'd love to meet them. I remember he literally crashed with us at the house of a friend that we were staying at.
Nice.
And he was in the van with us and followed us around for however many days it was. I feel like it was like three days or so, for him being a little older. So he definitely looked a little more tired than we were at the time. But yeah, so much happened in that same period of time. Like we're talking about, like, like the album came out, we did Warped Tour, then we got on the Ernie Ball stage, and then this big, huge article comes out. It was fantastic. Really like, there's, because we had our previous band where like the stars aligned in one area, but it kind of felt like they were all aligning everywhere at the same time, to the point, like I'm saying,
Yeah.
people are on Starbucks windows kind of to wave at me.
That article was so many pages.
It was. I mean,
it was like day by day describing what you went through in the morning, afternoon, evening.
it was, and for days, I remember vividly playing the Ernie Ball stage again, the New York Warped Tour date. The article just came out. Maybe it was like the day prior. It was definitely that weekend. So that was also like perfect. I think that helped get more people to come to our stage because people saw that article, or people's parents saw it and said, you know, do you know who this band is? I'll never forget, and this is so funny to me, but I remember like a group of kids coming up to us and just talking to us saying, I saw the article, it was amazing. And they said something along the lines of like, I bet you guys have like huge houses or something like that. You know, in my mind, I'm like, you know, we can barely afford, you know, the value meal at McDonald's.
Yeah.
But also that kind of like connects, I think, to what you were saying was, you know, we're always conscious of how we portrayed ourselves, you know, not that we're ever trying to pull a fast one on anybody, but I think we knew how to like present ourselves as a band. And I think that helped the band as well. Like we knew to have a photo of us on the back cover. We knew to push our, you know, attractive frontman, so to speak, with a good voice as the leader. You know, thankfully I had a dad who reached out to Newsday. We knew to take that opportunity. We knew to make the most of it. We knew to let him behind the scenes because there was nothing wild and weird going on. Like we knew it was a good move because we were enjoying ourselves and all he was going to see is 5 guys enjoying themselves. So, yeah, it was fantastic. I know I keep saying
we're getting a little bit close to the end. Are there any other fun stories from tour that you remember, or maybe like disasters that occurred, or like the grossest place you had to sleep, or like you had to load into a venue where the stairs were, you know, 4 stories high or something?
Yeah, well, my one good memory, I do remember one of the Warped Tour dates, you dancing on the side of the stage. I don't remember how you were dancing, but you were definitely like dancing, and I remember like that being like a really cool feeling, like, you know, to like have a label where we knew the person actually liked us, and liked the music, which I don't think everyone had at the time. You know, there was bands being signed, but I don't think people necessarily cared. So I have that one great memory.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just remember that you were just going at it on stage. I feel like it might have been Georgia. I don't know, but that's just kind of what's popping into my brain.
Georgia, that date, I remember that we had to park
like a real stage
far away. It was like an amphitheater kind
of.
That's
what it was. That's what it was. It was like a real stage we actually played on that day. It was kind of like very far removed.
Yeah, it was really far from where we had to park. I just remember just like taking stuff so far.
Yeah, so that was definitely the date. In terms of like the weird stories, I definitely remember staying at someone's home. I feel like it was in Alabama, and it was just I just remember like the mom at the top. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry, I'm combining 2 stories. I think the one I'm thinking about is actually Detroit. The mom just sitting at the top of the steps, chain smoking for hours. The dad wanting to like party with the bands downstairs, but we weren't party bands. You know, of course we like stayed up late and stuff like that, but we weren't partiers. But he like, I guess it was his time to shine. I remember him offering us like his homemade like moonshine and stuff. And then I remember us just wanting to go to bed, and he was still awake. And I don't know. I think he was like peeing in the sink downstairs, like right next to where we were sleeping. So, you know, that was really, thankfully, that was the extent of our, you know, horror stories. I remember another time in Alabama, though, sleeping in a house that was just dirty. And I remember Dan sleeping in the van because he didn't want to be in the house. It was so gross. But like, again, overall, having spent those many years, you know, on the road, if those were the worst, that's not so bad. Thankfully, you know, like we all didn't have anything too drastic happen to us on the road.
So as a band from the Northeast, I know that there's a lot of mystique to California.
Sure.
What was it like for you guys as a band, or for you, the first couple of times you toured to California?
I remember always wanting to go to California because, like, you know, like there is that mystique, but then there's also Green Day and Blink-182, and there's Bad Religion, and there's No Effects, there's Lagwagon, there's all these, you know, bands. Hopefully those were all California bands. I feel like maybe they were. Okay.
Yeah.
We had gotten out there in Whoopie Cushion actually first, so we kind of had like a taste for it. And I remember, yeah, like just loving it. It seemed, at least in our minds, it seemed like that fast-paced New York. It was drastically different in California. Whether or not this is true, it just seemed like people are always at the beach eating burritos and saying things were rad. That's like how we like perceived it. So we always loved to get out there. It just felt like, yeah, it was like, you know, it was just like warm, and there were so many great record labels out there, and there's so many great bands out there. So we just wanted to get there all the time. I remember booking a lot of like, we'd play for like a week out in California, and we'd like make sure we had days off so we could go to the beach, or we go to the malls, or we go to see like other shows. Yeah, it just, there was this mystique, but there was also this like this charm that we thought was just so fantastic, and we just wanted to keep getting back out there. And again, you know, we had opportunities in Whoopie Cushion to be out there. The Ataris had us play like a huge show.
Nice.
Out there at the Glass House in Pomona.
Oh my God, that's huge.
Yeah, I think that was similar to Sports, you know, Sports Plus in terms of like the crowd and the reaction. I remember Thru Records coming out to see us play at that show. And I think that kind of also then comes back to the overall thing of like, we were always good at just trying to get people to hear us. You know, I think there was some like authenticity to how genuine we were and how much we enjoyed the music. But, you know, I am sidetracking, but yeah, always loved California. And I'd love to get my wife and kids out there. I haven't been there since my touring days. So it's been a while.
Yeah, well, it's pretty different now than it used to be. So maybe maybe it'll be a different experience.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll still try.
I just went out to LA and San Francisco, and on a separate trip I went to Portland and Seattle. So
Okay.
I still love the West Coast. It's a big part of who I am.
Yeah. I have some family in San Francisco, so I'd love the opportunity to get out there. We will.
Travis, thank you so
Yes.
much. I don't want to keep you any longer, but this has been a fun catch up, and I'm glad that you you know, enlightened the fans of the Goodwill with some behind the scenes
Yes, thank you.
information and stories and stuff. So it's a great record. Everyone out there, if you haven't listened to the Goodwill, it's on Spotify. And you know, play it loud.
And listen to Gone Stereo. That's my advice for everybody.
Yes, thank you. And Gone Stereo. Oh yeah. So I don't want to stop too soon. So Gone Stereo is a band on Negative Progression now. They're from Long Island. Maddie, who's a singer, was in Whoopie Cushion.
Yes, correct.
And you briefly tell everyone about what you're doing now.
Oh,
So
appreciate it.
playing now.
Yes. Yeah, so I play in an acoustic punk duo. We kind of look at it more as a band. I usually don't say duo. We usually just say punk band, but we just so happen to be acoustic, and we're a duo called Bitters and Distractions. We've been around for about 8 years now. Similar to previous bands, you know, just trying to get as many people to hear us, play as many shows as possible. We're not touring, you know, we have wives, we have kids, we have full-time jobs. But we did just sign with one of my favorite labels in the entire world. They're called Sell the Heart Records. They're from out in California. They're going to be putting out our next album. Fantastic label. We just finished recording. They're going to be pressing vinyl. It's going to be part of their 2024 record club, which we're just super, super excited about. But yeah, the band is called Bitters and Distractions. It's just a punk rock band. But like I said, we just so happen to be a duo, and we just so happen to be acoustic. And we play a lot of shows with Gone Stereo, which has been fantastic for Maddie and I now 20 years later to still be playing shows together is amazing. And I personally like love Gone Stereo too. So to also just play with the band that I love is great. So that's why I'm always using every opportunity to tell people to listen to them as much as I tell people to listen to Bitters and Distractions.
Well, that's awesome. All right. Well, have a great day, and I will talk to you again soon, I hope.
All right. Thank you so much, Seth. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye, Travis.